Hi everybody, I wanted to take a moment and go through these two problems from the fourth slide of lesson 5.3 again, just for anyone who wanted to see it one more time or see it a little bit closer and have some time to really absorb the steps. So what we have here are two balanced hangers. We know they're balanced because each side is equal. So we know that one side equals the other. And so for this first one, what we're wanting to do is write an equation. So we want to observe what's on one side. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 W's, and then we have a box that says 3 halves. So we're going to say that side, so 4W plus 3 halves is equal to everything on the other side, this whole thing right there. So all of that is equal to 17 halves. Let me write that a little bit more clear. 17 halves. Okay, I'm going to make my T-chart. All right, I'm going to erase some of these scribbles I just threw on there. All right, so what we were seeing on these problems is that it's pretty clear that the first thing we want to do is remove some of our constants so we can start isolating that variable. So one step we can do right away is to take that 3 halves and get rid of it. By doing that, though, we just threw our thing out of balance, our hanger out of balance. So I actually want to remove 3 halves from this as well. So let's imagine that little piece I took away represents 3 of the halves, and I'm cutting it off. What I have left there is, so I had 17 halves, and I subtracted 3 of them. So I have 14 halves left over. So everything I just did there with our hanger is a visual representation of this first step of removing a constant. So showing our work, we would show that just negative or subtracting 3 halves. So we're making a 0 pair, subtracting 3 halves, and we're left with 4 W's equal 14 halves. Now we know that 14 divided by 2 is 7. So I'm actually going to rewrite this. So instead of that, I'm going to rewrite what's left over. So this group right here, after we subtracted our 3 halves, is worth 7. I'm going to rewrite this as 4W is equal to 7. And again, that's because 14 divided by 2 is 7. So now I have these 4 W's, and they are going to divide equally into 4, and then we'll divide that 7 by 4 as well. So if we divide each side by 4, then 1 W equals 7/4. We can simplify that if you want. You can leave it as this improper fraction, but you could also say, well, 7/4 is equal to 3 plus 4/4. There's a 1 right there. So 7/4 is equal to 1 and 3/4, or that's equal to 1.75. So you can say any of those. You could say W equals 1 and 3/4, or W equals 1.75. All 3 of those solutions are correct. Now let's take a look at this second one. What I wanted you to notice with this is that we actually have 2 identical groups of W plus 2/3. All of that equaling 20/3. So we can write this using the distributive property. We can say that what we have here is 2 sets of W plus 2/3 all of that equaling 20 thirds. And there's a number of ways we can look at this problem. There's a number of ways we can approach this problem. But I think with this visual, it's really nice to show that what we can do here is actually start with division. We've been starting with our subtraction or addition, but here we can start with a little bit of division. Because we have two sets of W plus 2/3, each of those sets is going to equal half of our 20 thirds. So if we divide this in two and we divide this in two, we come up with W plus 2/3 is equal to 10 thirds. Because 20 thirds divided by 2 is 10 thirds. So I'm going to go back to our model and imagine that I don't need both of these. What I actually did was I unhooked one entire W plus 2/3 group. I unhooked it and I got rid of it. And then I went into this 20 thirds and I cut that in half too. So all I actually have is a 10 thirds, and that equals W plus 2/3. And now we can go to what we have been doing in our step work. We can subtract our constant and get rid of that 2/3. So subtract 2/3. We have to subtract 2/3 right here as well. Subtract 2/3. So instead of 10, we actually have 8/3. And W equals 8/3. I did that step really fast. Let me do that step right here too if anyone wants to see that. So we had 10 thirds minus 2/3 equals 8/3.